So the first 3 months, I want to be able to come back to a client and say, hey, you're in the insurance industry or you're a lawyer. On average, right now, you're about 10% higher than what the industry average is for an insurance agent or whatever it may be. But we're going to work on these 3 things to get you lower. And in the first 3 months of onboarding, I'm going to show you how I can get that lower and what that actually means back for you.
How did a professional rodeo bullfighter turn himself into the COO of a multi-million-dollar MSP? By buckling down and cracking the whip. Listen to Ethan Farlow, COO at Comtech Solutions, a family-owned MSP out of Central North Carolina, talk to us about the various ways in which Comtech is using data and process to add profit to its bottom line, value to its clients, and negotiate with its vendors to plow back money into their BD and marketing strategies. Listen in on some of the key metrics Ethan uses to monitor costs, including time spent per endpoint per user and average tickets worked per tech per day to fix costs and drive profitability. But first, before we go any further, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. My name is Madhur Duggar. I work in the IT and software M&A space, and this is my podcast series, M&A Insights. If you are interested in having a conversation around the strategic direction of your firm, are looking to grow your book and want some marketing and business development help, or are an investor looking to make an acquisition in the space, write to me at podcastwithmadhur, that's MADHUR, @gmail.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Ethan, welcome to my show. So great to have you here. I'm glad we connected at Producers Club, right? Robin Robbins' event. And I love the thing that you're presenting about. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Many MSPs, they struggle to grow revenue without proportionately increasing costs, right? What are some of the strategies that you have implemented that help you with this challenge?
Yeah, so the thing that I would say is there's a lot of different ways or a lot of different areas I could go here. Trying to think of some of the things that have changed over the last few years that have made us grow, I would say grow rapidly, percentage-wise. In the past, when we first started out, we were, and I think everybody has to start this way, you're trying to almost customize so many different offerings. You're trying to figure out where you need to be in the market. And I'm by no means saying we've got it figured out, but you're trying to figure out what client you serve and how's the best way to serve them. So you're almost customizing a lot of solutions. You know, maybe you do a CPA firm this way, and then you do a manufacturing firm this way, or whatever it may be. But the faster you can figure out what area you're going to serve, and then figure out what is the underlying piece of every single one of those, and just implement that and do it really well, then once you streamline that stuff, it just makes life a lot easier. To give you an example, some of the stuff that I see or that made the biggest difference here recently, figuring out our ideal client. And then the second thing is just simply getting very consistent with billing. We bill once per month at the beginning of the month for that month's services. So we're somewhat of almost a month ahead when we're billing. And then the other thing is everything from Office 365 to machine ads, phone system ads, or removes, all of that, when you put it into the system, when a technician adds or removes something, it automatically changes on the agreement. You don't have a human on the back end that's having to update things manually. I know when we first started, when a technician added a new Office 365 license for a client, we didn't have a system. So there was just, make sure you remember to put it on the ticket that you added this on here. And then somebody would have to remember to go back and add that to the agreement. And that ends up just being a mess. So the technology we now have allows almost all those adds, removes, changes to just automatically update the agreement, prorate things. And that was just, that's a huge saver. So you don't end up providing services for things that you're just simply not getting paid for. The other thing I would say that has helped us streamline quite a bit, and especially grow revenue without increasing cost, is being able, if you know your data, if you know what you're doing on a quarter by quarter or monthly basis and which way you're trending, you can take that information back to your vendors and say, hey, I'm trending. It's looking like I'm going to do 20, I'm going to do 30% growth, whatever it is. Here's what I propose. You propose this X price. I'm proposing I'll pay that price, but what I want also is, because I'm growing at 30% a year and I plan on implementing your solution to every single place, I want 10% of my bill every single month. I want it back in marketing development funds or something like that. So again, we can proportionally go up. We can increase our revenue, but our cost is actually shrinking per client because I'm getting some of that money back. But to be able to do that, you got to have that data to be able to say, I know for a fact that I'm growing 10% or 20%. It doesn't, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter what the number is. But going back to your vendors and saying, I have this data, here's how I can prove it. Can I get this back? And a lot of vendors go, yeah, sure, that sounds great. As long as you're growing with us and you're clear, you're going to put our solution in every single client moving forward, it's a no-brainer.
What KPIs do you find useful when you're looking at cost efficiency?
Yeah, so there's 50 million you can look at. But I would say hours per endpoint per month. That's probably the largest one that I pay attention to on a annual, semi-annual basis. So how many reactive hours are we spending on average per endpoint per month? Now, I actually do that I separate it for phones, for our phone system, as well as separate it for computers. And I'm analyzing that on a trend, and I'm making sure that one of the things I've been doing recently is trying to figure out the best way to look at that from an onboarding perspective. So the first 3 months, I want to be able to come back to a client and say, hey, you're in the insurance industry or you're a lawyer. On average, right now, you're about 10% higher than what the industry average is for an insurance agent or whatever it may be. But we're going to work on these 3 things to get you lower. And in the first 3 months of onboarding, I'm going to show you how I can get that lower and what that actually means back for you. So hours per endpoint per month. Another one I would say is average tickets per tech worked each day. Now, obviously, that's going to be different depending on how your teams are set up. If you have help desk that's just help desk versus help desk that runs on-site calls and that sort of thing, they're not going to be able to take as much tickets. But I'm going to look at that. And then I'm also going to look at a weekly, and I look at it monthly as well, but ticket count trending. So how many tickets do we have in total, and compared to how many machines we're monitoring or phone systems we're handling. And the reason why I keep that is I keep that up in front center in front of all of our techs. And the main reason I do that is because I want to show the techs the technology, if we're doing it right, the technology doing what it should be doing, which is our systems are driving growth. We're adding a lot of computers, we're adding a lot of phone systems, but the number of tickets per device is actually reduced. Because if we're doing 100 computers and you get a ticket in every single day for each one, 3 months from now, that's going to be crazy. But 3 months from now, if I have 300 computers and I still have 100 tickets, then I can show the reduction, and I can show all of our techs we're making progress. Our systems and our technology is doing what it should, and we should be able to add a lot more revenue. I mean, that's what it boils down to, a lot more revenue, and not have to add a bunch more techs because we don't have anywhere near the amount of tickets. Yeah. So those are some of the KPIs.
Yeah, those are really good ones. So let's just go back to that metric, hours per endpoint per month, without giving things away. I mean, what's the band that you feel, okay, if it goes If it goes above this number, like this sounds like a lot, right? And if it goes below this number, that's great.
Yeah. So obviously it depends on the client, of course, but on average, I mean, average is it all plays out. It is an average. So our typical client for the IT side for per computer, it's around 0.4 hours per endpoint per month. Now that does include the on-site time it takes to go and do a number of things that most MSPs don't include in their services. So for our clients, we actually include like machine installs. We actually include that. That is an additional charge. So that 0.4 hours per endpoint per month, it includes things like that, which take a little bit of time. But somewhere around that 0.4 hours is where we want to sit. I do have a number of clients that if they stay with us for a number of years, and most do, we can work on getting that down to 0.33 or 0.3. So we can really get that number down. For phone systems, honestly, I don't want to say they're so simple, but they have simpler issues. We're somewhere around 0.06 hours per endpoint.
Hiring, big topic of conversation nowadays, right? Often a significant expense for MSPs, both in terms of the cost for hiring as well as like keeping them happy, right? What are some of the best practices you can share, that you have found useful at your firm around hiring process?
Yeah, so I would start at the process that you have from beginning to end in hiring. I would say creating a process from everything from creating the job application. How do we create the job application, to screening, doing all the screening calls, that sort of thing, to hiring, to onboarding, having a very, very clear process on this is how we train from day 1 through day 90, that sort of thing. It's extremely clear to the point where when our technicians show up, when we hire someone, we have an entire training document that goes through. On day 1, you're going to learn all of these things. On day 2, you're going to learn all these things. All the way to 10 days in, you should know how to do this, this, and this, and know. I mean, just across the board, I don't want to say everything's a process, but it is in that sense. Now I know that may sound a little daunting, but it doesn't have to be. The next hire that you go to do, just simply, as you're creating that job application, jot down, this is how I'm doing that. I mean, that's essentially what I did with our service manager. Like, this is to create a job application. I copy this place on Indeed, and then I take the job application and I put it on, I put it into ChatGPT. This is what I'm looking for. I want it to rewrite it for this, this, and this. And I try to create a system out of it best I can. And then just consistently follow that piece. The other thing I'll say on that is spending some time to really do some research in your area, specifically your area, and knowing what your job market can take as far as salaries go. There's nothing wrong with being upfront about that through the entire hiring process. That's something I learned at the very beginning, which was I would get really excited about new potential hires, and then I was just too nervous to ask the question, or did you see? Just so we're clear, you did see the salary range. We're very clear about that, and you agree to it, because I don't want to go through this whole process if you think that, if I say the salary range is 40 to 70,000, we don't really need to talk if you need 90. There's no point, because this position is not going to pay that much. So that's certainly that's a big thing. I would put that very front and center. And actually, on all of our job applications, we have a number of questions that we ask in the job application. And one of my follow-ups is always, did you answer all the questions on the job application? Did you see the salary range, and do you agree to it? And then I want you to reply back with 3 or 4 times that you could possibly do a Zoom call. And honestly, that weeds off. I say that weeds out probably 25% or more, because some people just don't respond, or people reply back and say, oh yeah, I didn't actually see that salary piece, even though it was listed, 4 times on the job application. I can't do that. So it just weeds out some calls, because that's every misstep that we take, in my mind, that takes more time is just simply a cost. And that's kind of the way I look at it, and just try to look at it and figure out a way to let's take less steps off the path, and just get the hire that we need at the right price, and make sure they're a good fit.
Are you using online search portals or online, like HR recruiting agencies and things to find talent, or are you doing this over LinkedIn and social media? How do you do this?
So right now, all of ours, our process is certainly let our team know, hey, we're wanting to we need this position filled. Here's the job application. Do you have any friends that you would recommend? Not saying they're going to get the job. They still have to go through the process as everybody else does. But this is the job application. Let them have a shot at it first, because they may know 2 or 3 friends. We've picked up so many employees like that, and they're great team members, because they already know some of the team, because they're already friends with them. Yeah. But then we pretty much immediately go to Indeed. We use Indeed almost all the time. We'll use Indeed, and then we'll use our LinkedIn to drive people back to Indeed and just say, hey, we posted this job application, and here you go.
Oh, that's a very good point. What is your view on onshore versus offshore resources?
So right now, we have pretty much stayed away from offshore. And the only reason is because we know it's more expensive, but we have chosen to focus around the North Carolina market. And we've just chosen to, honestly, we're up front and say, hey, listen, we're going to cost more than our competitor down the street, almost always. And the reason why is because you're getting US based support, and it's going to cost more. And we haven't run into too many issues like that. I'm always reconsidering that decision. Like how can we possibly use offshore help? I haven't seen a good way to do it as of yet. But I do know there are definitely some MSPs that are doing it and doing it successful, and more power to them. I definitely think that it's something in the future that I want to consider, because I think leveraging the offshore help could certainly help, especially as costs go up and that sort of thing.
What role can automation play, right? And I know you already talked about this a little bit, but what's also interesting, Ethan, is you guys are doing some stuff with PIA now, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about PIA, and talk to us a little bit about what role you think automation can play in reducing costs, especially in this AI world that we're living in?
Yeah, for sure. So this actually, in my opinion, dovetails into the decision we've made to not offshore things. We've talked about a number of things in our management team, and we consistently talk about, should we offshore things? And almost always right now, it has come down, and maybe it's our own ignorance. That's possible. We may be missing a boat here. But it almost always comes down to, why can't we automate whatever we're about to try to do? Is there a reason why we need to pay a human to do that? Or can we automate this? And 9 times out of 10, from our experience, it has ended with, we could probably just automate this, and we've done that. So for us, automation comes into play on certainly the repetitive task, obviously, all the repetitive type things. But the only word of caution that I would say is, especially with the tools that we now all have as MSPs, we have the ability to automate pretty much everything, which means you can quickly find yourself automating things that you look back 6 months later and go, okay, yes, this was automated and we got all these reports or whatever, but like, I never read the reports. There's just no purpose in it. So before we automate a task, we always ask, why are we even doing this task? Does it really need to be done? Some of the examples, or an example that we have done for automation that worked really well and is still working really well, is some of our newer techs. Again, this goes back to hiring. We found that our newer techs coming in were really struggling with certain areas of, a level 2 tech or whatever it is in our phone system, a voicemail pin reset or changing a ring group, whatever it is. They really understood that. The newer techs, it took some time. So what we did is I took all the tickets and I said, okay, what is the most amount of things that we get? If I get 100 tickets, 30 of them are going to be about email, 20 are about phone system, whatever it may be. And then I dug into every single one of those things. And I figured out, okay, 90% of the tickets in this area are about these 3 things. I went and created videos and Word documents, my team and I, and created them, put them in IT Glue, and use that. And now every single ticket that comes in that gets categorized, phone system, voicemail, or whatever it is, almost every single ticket gets a ticket template automatic applied to it. And when it's automatically applied, all of our new techs, when they get the ticket, if they don't have an idea on even how to work it, they can look in the internal notes and say, this is roughly how you work this ticket. So that's a piece of automation that after a little bit of time, it took some manual work up front, but that's the kind of automation that
that's helpful.
I love that, because it just saves so much time, because anytime a new tech comes in, they always have at least some sort of guide. This is how you roughly work this ticket.
Yeah. You talked about an example at Producers Club, which I really love. This was this example about the automation of the billing process, right? So that you don't have to have arrears. I mean, you don't have to talk about that example, but I am curious, can you give us some examples of how an MSP might cross-sell or upsell effectively to increase the top line, without actually adding the cost?
Yeah. So the way that we do it is we do a client matrix. So we take all of our clients, put them in a matrix. We have all of our products listed there, and it is our client success manager, think account manager. I work with him to go quarter by quarter, and sometimes it's semi-annual, to say, hey, all of the clients that don't have IT, but they have phone systems, what strategies can we use to target those clients specifically to get them to go to IT? And sometimes, obviously, we look over the clientele and we go, hey, it's not realistic. They have phone system, but they're not a fit for IT or vice versa, whatever it is. But that's pretty much the way that we do it. Is we're consistently analyzing our clients to figure out who has what, and is there something that we can create with our marketing team, ideally quarter by quarter. Hey, we've got a 90-day sprint. What we're going to focus on is this certain client that doesn't have this. If it's going to serve their needs, we don't want to just sell into something that isn't going to serve their needs. But that's what we do, and we even take it. I would say we even take it a step further, which is, especially for our phone system, we'll take our phone system and break it down. Okay, who has call queues? Who has call recording? Who has, who's using the mobile app and the desktop app? And then we break that down into the phone system and say, okay, you may have our phone system, but right now you're not using call queues. You're not paying for call recording. And we think that would be a value. And we go into and we dig into that. And okay, what could we do this quarter to create a strategy? What could we do and use marketing to target those specific clients and say, you need call recording and here's why. And now we've got to come up with 10 examples on why. And then every single week we're going to send a different email and not be too aggressive, but this is what we're going to do. And that's how we do it.
That's awesome. Do you mind asking, when you put that list together of which client is using which service and what are they not using, right? how do you figure that all out? I mean, on the one hand, I feel, yeah, you should know that. On the other hand, it might get lost in the details, right? So how do you even make that list together?
Yeah. So that's the some of that, or a lot of that's automation. A lot of that's the reports that we can pull, but in all honesty, there's some of that's just manual labor. It's not the best. It's not the best solution, but I don't have a better one right now. That is the part where potentially we could use something like offshore help. We could say, hey, you could get some lower cost labor, and you could do that.
Big picture stuff. Again, with AI being such a big game changer, 5 years down the road, maybe 5 to 10 years down the road, where do you see the MSP industry evolving to from an operational efficiency standpoint?
Yeah, I think what I'm looking for, especially on the AI side, what I am specifically looking for is when I can plug in, and maybe it's already here, and maybe somebody's figured it out and they want to comment to me and show it to me, or possibly sell it to me. I want to see it. But what I would like to see, where I think that AI is going, is the ability to analyze massive amounts of data and pulling insights from that data to give me ideas on what next to go look for. So when I think about what is coming, or what I would like to see, is I would like to see at the point where I can take all of my call recordings for all of my clients, or at least our organization, and take all of our call recordings, take all of our tickets, every single ticket information that comes in, and analyze that and give me, hey, the last 3 months, you worked 20% more on this type of problem, or something like that. That's where I'm hoping that we go. I know I've worked with a number of vendors who promised that they could do these things, and I haven't seen it yet. And maybe it also might be my fault. I mean, I admit it's not necessarily completely the vendor's fault. It's certainly, I had a hand in it. But that's what I'm hoping. That's really what I'm hoping for. Some of the other things that for the next 5 to 10 years that I'm looking at, one of the things is trying to figure out how to effectively use offshore, if that's an option. I think that is, I don't want to say one of our weaknesses. It might be, though. Our competitors could certainly use it. They could come in, if they can come in at 30% less or something like that than what we're charging, we just really need to be clear and justify why we're 30% more. And right now that hasn't been a problem, but I could see if, depending on how inflation goes and cost and that sort of thing, I could see where that might be, that might be a trade-off somebody's willing to make.
What's a piece of advice you want to give to MSP leaders who are aiming to grow their business without sacrificing the quality of what they're offering to the clients?
For sure. I would say 2 things. One is know what your cost is. Know what your cost is every single month. And I would say on average per computer, how much is it going to take to support that? What is your cost? And then know your cost and know which will lead you to what you have to charge. And that's what it boils down to for us, is we really know our cost. So we know what we would like to make profit-wise. So then we just back into the data and figure out we need to charge this amount. If we're going to make that work, like that's the only way to make it work. We either drop our cost or we raise our price. And obviously there's issues with both of those. You got to figure that out. But I'd say knowing that is certainly the biggest difference. Most of the time, it's just you're just simply not charging enough. And price-wise, you're at $100 seat, $100 a seat, and you really need to be at $130 a seat. And you just need to start charging more and listen to the feedback that you get. listen to the feedback. Oh, that's too expensive. I can go down here. I can go to your competitor. He's doing $70 a seat. Okay, figure out what that difference is, and then just figure out a way.
Where can listeners connect with you, be it MSPs or be it your potential clients, to learn more about Comtech?
Yeah. So our YouTube channel is definitely where I release the most amount of videos. So just Comtech Network Solutions on YouTube. Go out to there. We release 1 or 2 videos a week. Certainly LinkedIn. You can find me at just Ethan Farlow. And then my email, which I'm sure you could probably include in the show notes or something like that, ethan@comtechnc.com. That is the best place to reach me, is probably my email. I'm certainly not the most active person on social media.
Ethan, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to have you on the show. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.